Hello out there, and today I'm going to be taking you through a comparison video of a few of my favorite releases of the year 2020 so far. And what we have today are the Spyderco Astute up top, we have the CRKT Piet, and then we also have the CJRB Rhea. And the reason for these three knives is that when the Rhea first came out, there were a couple people asking for a comparison between these two. And then when the Astute came out, there were a couple people asking for a comparison to the Rhea from that. So I figured let's get all three of them together. Let's talk about the high points. I really like all three of these knives, but maybe today we can go through some of the comparisons. And even though the differences are going to be slight in a lot of areas, there might be enough here to help you make a decision if you're choosing to buy one or just what your preference might be. All right, so getting started, and first of all, let me say none of these three knives really like to sit on the table in the most eye-appealing way, so my apologies for that. But getting started, let's start with the most important spec of them all, according to Ray from the EDCC. It's the price, right? So we have three different price tiers for these knives. The Astute up top is in the $42, $43 price range. The Piet is right around 30 bucks, maybe a little bit less. And then the CJRB Rhea has two different pricing tiers. There's a $33 to $35 price range, which is in this 12C27N and G10. And then there's a micarta version that has a new proprietary budget steel. That one is running, I think, around 55 bucks. So for the sake of the comparison, and I think honestly to keep it competitive amongst these three, we're definitely going to stick with this version, the G10 12C27N at 33 bucks. It makes it really competitive. And yeah, it doesn't really change the dynamic of this video. All right, but that's the price point. So they're all relatively affordable. These two are more what I would consider budget knives, and Spyderco doesn't really have many what I consider budget knives, but this is their most economic, I think their cheapest like full-size folder knife that they have available right now, which it's pretty cool that it's coming in at that low of a price, but even so, you know, it's still 10 bucks more expensive than the other ones. All right, when we get into the blades, so yeah, starting with that, we have 8CR13 MOV with the Piet and with the Astute, and then like I said, 12C27N with the CJRB. Now, is that going to matter? I don't know. If you're a steel guy or you're someone who just hates 8CR, then yeah, maybe the CJRB has a leg up here. I honestly have never really noticed a difference with 12C27N in terms of performance. It's minor compared to 8CR, depending, like, if all the other variations, if all the other issues, variables is the word, are the same, then yeah, from my understanding and from my experience, 12C27N isn't really going to be leaps and bounds better than 8CR, but it is different and it is an improvement, and so I can understand someone wanting that, but it really didn't matter to me that this was 12C versus 8CR. The blade shape on this one is extremely attractive. When we're talking about the blade shape, this one with that belly just sort of sets it apart from the other two. I really like the look of it. All three of these have flat grinds. The Piet, being Voxna's design, just has it has that, I don't know, signature Vox kind of look here, but it also is a little bit different in terms of belly and a little bit more like stabby at the tip, which I really like because a lot of his designs don't have that. And so this, you know, the more like broad and taller blades don't have that from him. And so this one, I just really dig the design. And yeah, I'd like to see something else with this design, like upscale in the future. But as it is, I don't really need that because the Piet works just fine. And then the Astute is just one of my favorite designs, period, in a long time. So yeah, I like all three of these designs when it comes to the blade. Like I said, when it comes to the steel, the 12C27N isn't going to really be that big of a factor. So I think in preference of blade shape, I would say I would take the Astute, I would take the CJRB at second, and then third place would be the Piet, but these two are really tight. The Astute for me is just a great design. It's one of the best looking Spydercos in a long time, and the fact that they released it on the more affordable platform, I think is a big plus for them. And it is something that they could do, you know, sprint runs with in the future, sure. I mean, we're seeing an S35 VN Tenacious come out, so there's no reason why they couldn't do that with this in the future as well. All right, as we continue to move on back, you can take a look. We'll talk about ergos next. The jimping is non-existent on all these. So where's my jimps? I don't got no jimps on here, no jimps on here, and no jimps on here. All the jimps have gone missing. No jimping. Is that an issue? As far as ergos, 2 of the 3 of these knives are actually like really, really good in hand despite that. And they're just comfortable, and it's just the lines of the knife that allow that. The Astute is super comfy. You can feel right here where like it should have jimping. So, I mean, it just would be a lot better off with jimping, but just the way that it fits is comfortable to the extent that it's not really that big of an issue when you're cutting. You'll slide up a little bit, but it'll be just fine. Hot spot with the clip that I have on here slightly, but the stock clip sucked, and we'll get back to that in just a minute. The Piet is actually a really comfortable knife as well. You can see though, the whole 4 fingers, it's a little bit iffy, where the Astute fit my hand a little bit better. This is comfortable and it's not going anywhere, but it's definitely not as good in hand, just for larger hands at least, and for, you know, extended use in terms of a lot of cutting. I do like this level of traction. They did a good job with plastic. I mean, I know that's a debate with FRN and stuff all the time, but I mean, as far as plastic goes, this works really well, and it's a way that I think you get value out of a budget material. So I am happy with that. The G10 on the Astute was really good too, but you know, just what you would expect from the Tenacious line. And then the G10 and then the ergos here are maybe a little bit iffy, and you know, that's sort of to be expected. When you look at these 3 knives, the one that jumps out at you as more of a gents folder is this one, the CJRB Rhea. It's just the way it is. It's more of a gents piece. It has more of that like thin line, thin looking streamlined design, and so it's just not going to be great in the hand if you're going to be using it for more than a couple minutes at a time. But chances are you won't, and even if you have to, like the blade is thin enough, and you know, you keep it sharp, it's going to get done what you need to get done. Ergos, you have this little like lip here, which is where the thumb stud goes when it's closed. So that sort of is a groove for your forefinger, and that works. And are you going to slide around a little bit on this? Yes. Is there high traction on the G10? It's not bad, actually. It's not slick. So, I mean, that's definitely not a negative, but you can see how polished everything is. And so it is a little bit smooth, and the liners here do extend, if you can see this, past the scales, so you are, you know, sort of sliding around on that a little bit. Not great in hand, but as far as hot spots, no big issues. So ergo wise, I would say we're actually set up first, second, third for these 3. But you know, that said, you might be looking at these knives for different capacities and looking at them for different reasons. So, I mean, I don't think that the CJRB ergos are terrible. It's just sort of a different kind of quality. All right, let's continue. As we were talking, and we sort of touched on that gents aspect of, you're talking about weight. And this was the interesting thing. Let's look at the size overall, right? The overall size of the CJRB is over 1/2 inch longer than the CRKT Piet, and it's pretty much right on par with the Astute in overall length. All right, and the reason why I bring that up is that if you are someone who's looking for a very lightweight knife, here you go, 2.18. So 2.18 ounces with full liners. You can see right here the skeletonizing of them. So that extra work that's done to keep it super light. Again, sort of fitting into that gents philosophy of something that's streamlined, very lightweight, easy to carry in any situation. So that's definitely a big benefit there. The Piet is just a little bit heavier than that, coming in at 2.47, just under 2.5 ounces. So this one still is pretty darn lightweight, definitely fits that gents capacity. You do have a nested liner on this scale here that is actually really hard to see, And so full liners on both sides as well, but there's really no machining to sort of cut the weight there, and so that's the reason for that. And then the Astute, and it might be a little bit heavier because of my aftermarket pocket clip, 2.66. And the thing that's impressive about that is I just think of the three of them, it seems like the strongest knife. You can see how thick the liners are here. It seems like the most built for, I think, all-purpose tasks and maybe most extended use. So you definitely have that extra rigidity, and really no real weight relief, no real weight cutting on this either. So 2.66 with this knife is definitely not a bad thing. So yeah, if you're watching up to this point, you're probably thinking, well, he likes all these knives, and yeah, I do. I like all of them. We're doing a top 10 list of the knives of the year for 2020. All three of these are most likely on that list, so that's definitely fun thing to be able to share. All right, and as we continue to move on back, let's talk about the clips. The Piet clip is really good. The CJRB clip is also really good. We've got loop over. The thing about the Piet is that it's reversible for lefties, so we definitely have that going for us. The Rhea, sort of a bummer for some people, it is not reversible. So it's deep carry, super sleek, not reversible. That said, it is removable. So a lot of people who might be using this as a gents piece, back pocket, just sliding it into a coat pocket, something like that. Yeah, not really gonna need the clip. The worst clip of the three, 100%, was on the Astute. It was a bummer, and I had to get rid of it. And again, we've talked about clips a ton of times, guys. I'm not that big of a clip Nazi, I guess. I just sometimes come across things that just irritate me. And the thing about it is that, like, the clips with Spyderco, they frustrate me not because they're so bad, but because they could so easily be better. Does that make sense? Like it wouldn't take much for it to be a better clip. But I would not have gone out and bought an aftermarket clip. I took the clip off of this and screwed around with it for a while and tried to find something that that I had that would fit, and a buddy suggested me trying this, and it worked. And so it's staying on there. So that's it. So would I have spent, was it so bad that I would have needed to spend 20 bucks on a clip for it? No. But again, it's one of those things where if you really hate the clip that much, $42 knife, $20 aftermarket clip, now you're talking about a $60 knife that is, you know, now it's not nearly as competitive with the other two or a lot of other things on the market when it comes to materials and blah, 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 right? So definitely keep that in mind. When it comes to clips, Piet is number 1, Rhea is number 2, and Astute is number 3. Even though I do really like this clip, this is a Benchmade Lynch clip that Stasa 23 anodized for me, and it looks sick. All right, let's keep pushing along. So what we have left is lockup and action. We've already talked about the price. We've already talked about the ergos. Talked about it as far as the blades. So what do we have when it comes to the action? What I've got to say is that we've got 3 pretty darn good knives. The Piet, let's just do a quick once over with this knife. This knife is solid. It locks up really well. It's centered really well. I have used this knife far heavier than I expected to, just for the size of it. You know, I've done, you know, a lot more jobs with this knife, just had it in my pocket when I needed it, and it's performed, and it's still super solid. CRKT has been inconsistent, even recently, in my opinion, with some of the quality of their mechanisms, at least the models that I've had the chance to hold. This is, for $30, as strong a knife as I've seen from them in a long time. I mean, they just got every aspect of this knife, the execution of it, right. So, and then the action drops shut. And this is on Teflon. So you can spider flick this if you have small enough fingers to squeeze it in. Really nice and snappy. I mean, they crushed this. It just gets me, like, just talking about it again now. I've had this knife since January. Talking about it again now just gets me excited for it, because it's just the perfect example of what CRKT can do for $30 and still make money. So, great work. The CJRB, it feels really dialed in. Lockup on this one is great as well. As you can see, just from that, it's like a right-handed oriented knife, and there's really no way to have it sit as far down in the handle, have the blade sit as far down in the handle with thumb studs if you're gonna have the thumb stud on both sides. So design-wise, they had to just make it a right-handed knife. The opening action is great. It drops shut pretty darn well. Spider flick lefty is good. So yeah, you do have that hindrance where you can't really open it both ways, and I understand the people who might be frustrated with that, but I mean, the mechanism, the lockup, everything about it, all the other stuff is pretty much on point. Last but not least, the Astute. So, I don't know, maybe it is the least of the three. I'm not sure. We have the spider hole opening, which is always a good way to open a knife. Lefty, righty. You can see that hole is exposed enough that if you're doing it lefty, you know, you can get in there. Also, hey, that clip sucks, but it is a 4-position pocket clip. So I forgot to mention that. Still the worst of the three, but depending on how you like to carry your knife, maybe that will impact your decision. All right, so action here is really good. Lockup is very good. When it comes to centering, so you can see this one is off center. It did not come off center. I was able to adjust the pivot and keep solid lockup in order to let it drop shut. So basically I sacrificed the centering just a little bit in order to get it to drop shut better. So mine came centered, but the action wasn't as good. Tweaked it a little bit. It just has such a nice authoritative opening sound. Whew, it's really hard to pick a winner here. Really hard. I'd say this is a push. All three of these are on point. All three of them are excellent. So at the end of the day, I mean, I basically just raved about 3 really good knives for 2020 and sort of hopefully pointed out a few differences, showed you a few things that if you were in the market for one of these or a couple of these or were on the fence about it, maybe this helped one person make a decision, then I think I've done my job today. Overall, my favorite of the 3, overall the favorite of the 3, man, it's got to be the Astute, you know, and I almost, just out of spite, out of like just recent anger with all the sprint runs from Spyderco, I almost just don't want to say it's the Astute, but this is a perfect example of Spyderco putting out a new model that's excellent. This is why I get upset when Spyderco puts out tons of sprint runs and not new models, because they do a great job with new models and it gets me excited. And this knife is yeah, it could be a gents folder, it could be something that you'd use in that capacity, but it's also going to be able to do just about everything you need an EDC to do, you know, and it's a little bit more expensive than the other two, but I think you'll find value in it if you get it, you know, as long as you can get past the clip and all the other, you know, good stuff. And, you know, as long as, you know, you understand what you're getting, I think that this is an absolute home run. The Piet, probably my favorite CRKT of the year. This is my second favorite of the 3. These two are like neck and neck. The Rhea is just a little bit behind because although I really like it and I really appreciate it and it's really shown me what CJRB can be, it also just isn't a style of knife that I necessarily need. And you know, it is sort of more of a gents folder, and I do get in situations where when I'm using a knife, I have to just use whatever I have on me for an extended period of time. And I think that the Piet sort of fits that need a little bit better than the Rhea does. But there are tons of people who are going to look at this and just think that the look of it surpasses the other two and that it's going to be for them. And I think that if you made this purchase at $33, it's a no-brainer. And to have something in the collection that looks as good as this, for that cheap of a price, and that's as built as well as this. I mean, it's a third place knife out of these three, but that doesn't mean it's not fantastic in its own right. All right, guys, so there it is, the breakdown of these three knives, talking about the comparisons, and hopefully you got something out of this today. I had a fun time doing it, so we're going to post it, and any questions, comments, complaints, suggestions you have, let me know. Let's talk about it in the comments, and I will talk to you soon. Take care and have a good one.